Hello, my name is Bayo Fesobi, and I'm honored to be featured on Afro Liberty Talks hosted by African Justice Media. The question before us today is, were we freer before? That's become a very interesting reality that some Africans today see liberty, free markets, limited government as Western ideas. But that's not completely incorrect. Liberty is not foreign to Africa. It is part of our heritage. Before the European colonialism carved Africa into artificial borders and imposed central bureaucracies, our societies functioned very much effectively through voluntary association, community-led justice, and decentralized governance. Liberty in its truest form had existed in the way we lived our lives, our private lives, the way we traded, the way we resolved conflicts, and the way we made collective decisions. And it's high time we stop seeing freedom in Africa as an imported phenomenon. We need to reclaim it as as something that is inherited. Let us quickly take a look at the pre-colonial African governance, starting with a very brief look at what Nigeria looks like in a very in a tribal sector. We see the Igbo people operating through village republics, decentralized communities governed through councils or elders, where decisions are made by consensus, not coercion. Consensus of popular participation, where the voices of the ordinary people mattered. Igbo society practiced a very direct form of democracy long before it became fashionable even in the West. We can as well see the Yoruba people, living in a structured society that is headed by the monarch. Yes, monarchs can be said to have been to have lived as an almost absolute, but they were limited by the councils like the Ogboni, the checks and balances from the oral court, and kings could be removed if they crossed certain boundaries. Trade was voluntary and managed locally and directly by the people. People migrated and formed alliances freely without passport or permits. We can see in other regions of Africa, such as in Somali, where we have um, the, the, the societies where stateless clan, operated by customary law with no central authority. Trade was vibrant across the Red Sea and in the Indian Ocean, and dispute, of course, was settled through, the elders' council. Individuals could lead their life away from clan, we need their clan protection and mutual agreement. If we look at the Central African Republic, we see Central African region, we see, how governance in areas like the Bakongo, was decentralized among provincial kings who governed through consensus as well and community councils. Trade along the Congo River, with palm oil, cloth, iron, and other goods, formed some forms of social coercion that relied on the customary law, and individuals could participate freely in local governance. We also see how each tribe managed its affairs autonomously, trade caravans, managing the economy through the Sahara, and, personal freedoms, tribal autonomy was fiercely protected even long before the Arab and the French influenced even the northern parts of the region. Of course, again, we see how, salt, raffia, cloth, and ivory thrived in Angola and some other parts of, Southern Africa. And justice, of course, was not central, but it was community-based. Movement across territory was free, and kinship and customary systems, promote non-coercive leadership. We look at Zimbabwe, where we have semi-autonomous chiefdoms living through council of elders. The Great Zimbabwe was a great trade hub with with India and China, even long before the colonial structure came in. And governance was consultative, not autocratic. Land ownership was communal, allowing for freedom of settlement and economic participation. These are not Western values. They are deep-rooted African values that are rooted in our systems, and they are embodied in the libertarian structure, through community accountability and shared power, not through any form of central authority. Again, we look at the justice system, which was also deeply rooted in the community. Before we had the colonial court and prisons, our justice system was a restorative one. Elders mediate dispute, compensation was preferred over punishment, reconciliation over imprisonment was priority. This form of justice, represented and projected the dignity of human, prioritized harmony and ensured social bonds ensured that social bonds were not broken. It didn't just require lawyers or judges. It required the truth. It required honesty. It required fairness. It required, all that embodies what could keep a society together. What else do we ask for if that's not liberty? If that's not freedom, I mean, what else do we call it? It's the freedom to belong, freedom to speak, freedom to trade, freedom to be heard, freedom to be a dissenting voice. And then came colonialism. We didn't just take the land, but of course rewrote the way the very way we lived. It's safe to say that colonialism, hijacked the fabric of liberty in Africa. Colonial government imposed new laws, taxed communities, and appointed warrant chiefs and weakened organic leadership. This replaced the consensus with command, replaced negotiations with enforcement. Suddenly, liberty became redefined, not as something that we lived with, but as something we now need to beg for. Colonialism didn't just bring order, it brought about centralization, it brought about control, it brought about coercion that persisted to today. Because even after independence, very many African states inherited the colonial structures, the centralized, rigid, top-down structure. And then when people begin to say liberty is Western, we begin to ask them, is it foreign to our ways of life or it is foreign to what has been brought to us? Today, we need to reconsider liberty as a path to progress. If we really want freedom, we must look backward for us to move forward. Africa's future depends on restoring the voluntary cooperation that existed within us, the community-based solution, the limited and accountable governance structures that characterized our traditional structures, even at the political entity. We aren't just we didn't just have leaders that were outrightly radical, but they were leaders who left blueprints for ancestral inheritance. We look at the Ujamaa spirit, we look at the Ubuntu, how there were communal land system, how the conflict resolution processes helped us to reject a model of society that is not focused on power, but has the mind of the people at heart. Therefore, liberty is not Western to us in Africa. It is wisdom rediscovered. You consider other pillars of freedom that we have, indicators like love, like peace, like rule of law, like tolerance. You begin to find that these are indigenous. This concept has indigenous roots in our customs and traditions, as against what is now becoming popular today, that becomes, that begs for the question, are we not free? Having to reconsider the concept of liberty and libertarianism as a Western importation, which is not so. It's high time we begin to learn our history. It's high time we, not just as the way colonial masters or the colonizers wrote it, but the way our people practice this. It's high time we question systems that centralize power and silence the voice of the people. It's high time we build organizations, startups, think tanks, and communities that reflect voluntary decentralized cooperation. It's high time we demanded a return to governance that is people-driven and people-centered, not power-hoarding or power-sharing. It's high time we begin to ensure that we build systems closer to the people, more efficient, and focused on harmony and not just punishment. Of course, it's important to also emphasize that young people are the future. They are the bridge between the past and the buried heritage that we need to pivot Africa into a freer future. Africans are not powerless, and our past is the proof that yes, we cannot continue to wait for freedom to be handed over to us. We need to reclaim it, not from the West, but from our forgetfulness. Liberty is African. I made bold to say that. Liberty is ancestral. I made bold to say that. Let us rise and lead Africa back to its roots, where freedom, dignity, wisdom begins to drive human interaction. Let's begin to, reimagine an Africa where liberty isn't just possible, but it is indigenous because it is truly us. My name again is Bayo Fesobi. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for being part of this essential conversation. See you some other time.